Hello everyone, JSimLady here. Welcome back. Today I am attempting to build a disability-friendly house in The Sims 4, which is nearly impossible. Well, I guess it's not impossible, but it's really very difficult, especially since we don't even have any decorative items that even remotely resemble anything that could be used for accessibility. For instance, grab bars for the bathrooms, we don't even have those. The showers don't even have them in them. There's nothing. There's nothing that even remotely looks like them that could be used in place of it. There's fairly narrow doors with the exception of this one front door here. Most of the open archways are also fairly small. Excuse me. I still have a little bit of a stuffy nose. Kind of stuffy, kind of not stuffy. And my voice is getting better. My cough is a lot better than it was before, but still just dealing with the residual effects of whatever it was, a sinus infection that turned into bronchitis, maybe. I don't know. But every now and then my voice catches a little bit still. And to make matters even worse, this video should have gone up a day earlier than it's gonna go up, but I cut my pinky finger and I cut it pretty bad too. And I cut it right where it rubs on and hits the desk when I'm using the mouse. So everything has been very slow going, but I really wanted to get this video up. I really like this little house and I really wanted everyone to see it. So I worked on it as much as I could, as often as I could. And now we're looking at it. We're looking at the speed build for it. It is an adorable little house. It is all one level. Now, it's not like people with disabilities can't live in two-story houses. They absolutely can. If your disability is not physical and does not require you to use a mobility aid, then stairs are just fine for you. If your disability does require you to use a mobility aid, but you have the money and the space for an elevator, then a two-story house is fine for you as well. The rest of us, one-story houses are generally where it's at. I've lived in a one-story house myself for a very long time now because me and stairs, we don't mix well. And I've never had the kind of money or been able to afford the kind of houses that would have the space to put in an elevator. Elevators can be incredibly expensive to install, especially in older homes. So, yeah, I've kind of always just preferred one-story ranch-style homes. It's the easiest for me. And now, as I move into a new phase of life where I will be a part-time wheelchair user, it's even nicer to be in a one-story house. The most we would have to do is if I became a permanent wheelchair user, we would have to take out our shower and put in an accessible shower, and we would have to put a ramp in our garage. And those are the only two things we would have to do. And it's a lot cheaper than trying to add an elevator onto a 100-year-old house by far. But that's the thing about being disabled. Even just those two things can be kind of expensive, and it requires alterations even to our house, which was built with my disability in mind in the first place. it's incredibly expensive to be disabled. But aside from that, I wanted to build this house because I wanted to bring awareness to how very little disability representation there is in the Sims franchise, and specifically The Sims 4, and how big name Simmers have been all in on bringing awareness to all sorts of other causes, but they've cared very little about bringing awareness to disability in The Sims 4. They've fought for all sorts of other inclusion in the game, but not disability. And you wouldn't even need to add a lot. Like, there are certain things that would be probably difficult to add. For instance, if you did have wheelchair using Sims, 90% of the game relies on stairs. How would you handle that? That's usually the first thing that people think about. I mean, come on, guys. We have werewolves, we have vampires, we have fairies in The Sims 4. Every Thanksgiving or Harvest Fest, as it's called in the game, our gnomes come alive. And if we don't give them the right gifts, they start fires or something. I don't know what they do because I always give them the right gifts. I'm terrified of those gnomes. But we have all sorts of real life stuff with a whimsical take, plus a little sci fi and fantasy mixed in as well. The Sims don't even get dressed like humans do. They just kind of do a little magic twirl and then they've changed their clothes. Why can't a magic ramp pop up and be placed over the stairs and the wheelchair just magically move up the ramp? I know that can be done, absolutely, without a doubt. There are other things that people who are not disabled don't even think about. Like, the stairs are the first thing that most non-disabled people think about, but there are actually other things that are much, much harder to build animations and stuff for. Transferring from a wheelchair to a bed or a wheelchair to the toilet, that's a much harder animation to pull off, excuse me. And so that's where the issues lie. But again, I ask you to look at all the magical things that are in the game already. The werewolves, the vampires, the fairies, all the everyday things that have little magical attachments to them. Giving birth. That is not how real life people give birth. I can assure you of that. That's an animation that because there's two different kinds depending on whether you just have a base game or you have Get to Work. Those animations are to not include a real birth animation, which I don't know if they could do a real birth animation and get away with a teen rating. Someone correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about that. But those are little animations that get around something much bigger and more complex. And nobody complains about that, so why can't we have some kind of magical little poofing animation that just teleports them from the wheelchair to the bed or the toilet? I mean, it's used in other situations to teleport Sims around to things that they don't have intermediate animations for, and people are fine with that. I think the biggest issue here is, and this may get me into a little bit of trouble, but I think the biggest issue is ableism. I think a large part of the community is ableist. They don't have enough experience with or care enough about disability. I get it. Some of them have done a rare fundraiser here or there for disability related causes, but it's extremely rare. And they don't bring as much attention to it as they have other things, and I'm not just talking one specific type of disability, and I'm not talking real life disabilities either. People have brought awareness to all sorts of issues in the game. This is what I'm specifically talking about, in the game. They've brought all sorts of brought all sorts of awareness to inclusion specifically in the game, except for disabilities. And that is very much ableism. Now, I'm not going to say that The Sims is not at all set up for disabled people, because there are some accessibility features that allow disabled people to play the game easier. They just have absolutely no way of representing disability within the game. And a life simulation game like this, I feel like, demands it. I'm not asking for disability representation in Call of Duty. I'm not asking for it even in Minecraft. There are places where it doesn't make sense to include an avatar in a wheelchair. But there are also places where it can and does make sense. And the Sims franchise is one of those places where it does make sense. And the more they include it, the more it just becomes a normalized part of life that people will get used to. And it won't be as big of a deal anymore. I just feel like there's a lot of ableism happening in the community, and it prevents the developers from being able to include anything more. And yeah, that makes me a little bit salty. Did you know that there are products that you probably use on a regular basis that were actually made for disabled people? And non-disabled people have benefited from them. Did you know audiobooks were made for disabled people? How about electric toothbrushes and ramps? Ramps that people with luggage and strollers have benefited from, but they were made for people in wheelchairs. One of the oldest things that I could find was the typewriter and keyboard. Chances are, if you're watching this video, you use a keyboard at least once a week. So, you're using disability accessibility items all the time. And yet you don't want to have anything to do with disabled people or representing even the most basic disabilities in The Sims 4. I mean, okay, that's a wild accusation for me to make. Not everybody watching this video is ableist and doesn't want to see disability in The Sims 4. But it kind of feels that way sometimes. It kind of feels like there are very few to no people that care. All other minority groups, it's the cool thing to support, but not disability, apparently. And so That's why we don't get anything disability related, not even a few decorative items. We got hearing aids, and people are like, there you go, you got your disability representation, now quit complaining. And so, like, that's about all we get. A few stickers on a couple of parking lots, not even all of the parking lots, just a couple of them have accessibility stickers on them. We got canes in The Sims 3, but if I remember correctly, they were only usable by elderly Sims, which is such a weird stereotype, but also I can kind of see how it came about, I guess, especially because of TV and whatnot. That was just the only time or place you really saw canes being used regularly. Another reason why disability should be included in things like The Sims 4, because it can potentially break certain stereotypes. If Sims of all ages can use canes, people would see that it's not really that weird. You know, we need more representation in media like The Sims. It is a life simulation game after all. But that's just my opinion. Now, back to the build. There were some areas in which there's just no disability related things at all. The kitchen is one of them. Things that they could have done, they could have added flashing lights to the stove or oven when Sims are cooking like grand meals at holidays. They sometimes walk away, and they could have flashing lights in place of like timers or whatever. Granted, that's a really small minor issue, but I am speaking specifically of kitchens here, and that was one of the few things that I could think of, other than maybe the smoke detector also having a flashing light, which I don't think it currently does, but you can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. And I often forget to put smoke detectors, fire alarms in my Sims homes anyways. So I probably wouldn't know if they did add them. I tend to just wing it and, hope for the best, I guess. But not specifically speaking of the kitchen, they could have added decorative grab bars at any point. They could have taken the drain pipes from what is meant to be like rain gutter drain pipe type things and use that as a basic starting model to quickly throw together a couple of grab bars for the bathroom. Their showers could have included decorative grab bars in them. Most showers do have grab bars, unless they're showers like what I have in this bathroom that you see on the screen right now, unless they're tiled showers. But 99% of fiberglass shower surrounds these days all have grab bars in them. It's just part of the mold now because it's been part of the law for most places to have that in showers since 1990. And now companies, when they make molded shower surrounds, they include the grab bars. Granted, the great majority of them are little tiny grab bars that are not as useful as they want to believe that they are. And it really is newer models only. Even 20 years ago, you wouldn't have found them regularly like you do now. And that was 10 years after the ADA was signed into law. But they're there. They're there regularly now. And it doesn't even require animations, it's just a decorative piece. Prosthetics, we have the servos. They can obviously make prosthetic limbs very easily, and they don't even do that. I'm just saying that there are some cheap and easy ways they could have put small amounts of disability representation into the game, more than just a hearing aid, an Omnipod or Dexcom, and a couple of floor stickers for parking lots that aren't even in every single parking lot. There are things that they could have done in the spaces where our Sims use the most, which is their homes, easily, and they haven't done it yet. And that makes me sad. That makes me very sad, to be honest. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that. And that's why I built this house. I've been thinking a lot about it, and it was really incredibly difficult. But there are some wide open wheelchair accessible spaces. I used the only door that looks like it would be wheelchair accessible. It's nice and wide, so don't say they can't do it, because that one is nice and wide. And I tried to include few carpets. Let's get into the walkthrough. Okay, I did make one little change from the speed build portion. I removed the wall mailbox because it really is not wheelchair accessible and we can't move it down any further. So I replaced it with this, which should be more easily accessible to someone in a wheelchair, because you're just reaching straight in rather than up and over the top like you would have been on the wall one. Otherwise, the front yard is your typical suburban front yard garden. We've got a cute little porch here with some plants. We've got the outdoor trash can here. Nothing too different, at least yet. We get to the front door, however, and you can see that I chose an extra wide front door. So this is the only door that I found that was extra wide, and so I thought that would be perfect for accommodating mobility aids. And then when you enter into the home, it's a very open, wide, uncluttered entryway. The coat racks here are lowered so that a person in a wheelchair can easily reach them, access them, and hang their own coats and things up theirself. And the shoe rack is right here, of course. Easy access as well. Also, the living room is very open, small off-centered coffee table so that you could pull a wheelchair up right here to enjoy TV with everyone, or easily transfer from a walker, crutches, or wheelchair to this area of the sofa, or even this seat right here, and not have too much trouble. So that's a perfect open living room, uncluttered. In real life, you would likely have to tape down the edges of the carpet so it's a little bit easier for wheels to go over of a walker or wheelchair and it's not getting bunched up or anything. Obviously, in The Sims, that's not a thing, so I didn't need to worry about it. Here we have a small office space slash a gaming area with a chair on wheels that can easily be slid over that way to get it out of the way for a wheelchair. Then we have the kitchen. Now, I mean, very little in The Sims is actually disability friendly, so there was no way I was gonna make a truly, no way I was gonna be able to make a truly disability friendly kitchen. So I just made a basic kitchen as well as I could. However, the dining space here, I left an open space for a wheelchair to use, which is not always necessary, especially in a situation like this where you have the end areas that a wheelchair could pull up to. But my thinking was this is right in front of the door, and that would maybe get annoying for the wheelchair user to have people constantly trying to get through here. Although it does kind of look like there'd maybe be enough room, I still feel like it's an accident waiting to happen to constantly be bumping into the wheelchair. So I left an empty space here so that the wheelchair user could be more comfortable and not feel like they were going to constantly have people bumping into their back. Now, if we go over here to the bedrooms, this is probably the second least accessible room in the house, although I tried to still stick with the concept and make sure there was a nice clear opening and path here, keep the clutter out of the way so a wheelchair or walker user could easily come in here to tuck their children in at night. I didn't add too much in the way of furniture. I did give them some toys, and honestly, in real life, you could use the lower drawers here for toy storage. You could use the TV stand for toy storage. In real life, you don't need a giant separate toy box. But if you really wanted a separate toy box, you could even just stick it here in this corner as well. Now, this bathroom is not super accessible, and in a truly accessible bathroom, you would have handrails here at the toilet, you would have handrails here getting into the shower, and you would have handrails here and in here in the shower. I tried hard to find anything that I could that would mimic handrails, but there isn't even the slightest hint of anything truly disability related in The Sims 4. Nothing except for the hearing aids and the stickers on the parking lots, and only a couple of the parking lots at that. So what makes this room slightly inaccessible is not the lack of handrails in the Sims games, but that it is a tighter space that would be harder to fully get the wheelchair in here and then close the door behind the person. I had that issue in both bathrooms. However, in this bathroom, you could easily wheel all the way over into the shower, close the door, and then work your way to the toilet. For this bathroom, it is a fully opened, completely universal designed shower with a shower chair. The soap and I guess sponge caddy, I guess you would call it, is lowered so it can easily be reached by someone sitting in a chair. And that is the bathrooms. For the master primary bedroom, we have all of the wardrobe stuff on this side of the room. The bed is still centered, but we left this whole area open here. No rug, no big plants that get in the way, no dressers over here. This is a good spot to transfer from wheelchair into bed, park wheelchair over here, or put walker here, have any medical supplies that might be necessary in this corner here, and still have good open access around the bedroom and into the bathroom. See how this house is not really all that much different from a normal, quote unquote, normal house. All you would need is some handrails in the bathrooms and maybe making the bathrooms ever so slightly bigger, which you can't really do in The Sims 4. But even just the added handrails in the bathrooms would make it an incredibly more accessible home. And I mean, we don't even get that in The Sims 4. A basic decorative object that just sits on the walls, and we don't even get that in The Sims 4. Yeah, I'm a little salty about that. But regardless of whether your Sims are disabled or not, it's a cute little 2-bedroom house that houses 4 Sims, 2 adults, 2 children, plenty of bathroom space, plenty of kitchen and dining space, a nice open living room, and even a gaming area. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!